Today with Joe Nash on Limericks Live 95 FM.
A few minutes ago we were talking about the worst that social media can be, and now we're about to talk about the best that it can be, which I suppose proves that it is what people use it for and what they do with it. And I'm delighted to welcome to the studio a former colleague of ours here actually at Live 95 FM, Rachel McMahon. Hi Rachel.
Hi Joe.
And your dad, Tony, was a famous sports broadcaster on this radio station and other radio stations before us for many years, the late Tony. And Talk About Dementia, or TAD, is your project, and it's a non-profit initiative. And it's to do really, or it's inspiration with what happened to your dad, Tony.
Absolutely. My father was diagnosed at the very young age of 58 with Alzheimer's. And it came as quite a shock because, like many people out there, we believed that it's just elderly people that get Alzheimer's. But I can assure you that Alzheimer's, or any form of dementia, which is the umbrella term for a number of different illnesses, Alzheimer's, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, which is one of the biggest in Limerick right now, they all fall under this umbrella term. And even at that, dementia itself is not an old age person's disease, and we learned that very soon after diagnosis.
Yeah, tell me a little about that experience. I mean, any of us who knew Tony knew that he was brilliant in many ways, super with words, great to express himself on and off the air, great sense of humour. So what happened and how long did it take?
Well, I guess I've during the course of speaking with people in my family, I've learned that they notice things a year before diagnosis, 2 years before diagnosis. And then when I met with his doctors to discuss his medical background, I learned he had been having memory problems for 3 years. Now, he was working both here and in customs and excise as well with these memory problems. I was absolutely floored. But just some of the things I noticed was everyday tasks seemed to be an issue for him, such as showering or getting dressed. I remember one particular occasion, we made a turn at the gated grounds to go onto the Ennis Road, and he drove on the right instead of the left and didn't see what was wrong with that at all. Bills would go unpaid, they'd be hidden away because he admitted he didn't know what to do with them. So there was this level of fear amongst myself and my mum and his friends and family until that diagnosis was made.
Yeah, because one of the things that Tony was famous for was an incredible memory.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wasn't it astonishing, his memory?
Absolutely. It really, really was. The things that he could go back to and recall exactly how they went down was astonishing. He had a really remarkable mind. It was very inspirational to me because I fell in love with broadcasting as a teenager coming in here and getting to work, with Anne-Marie and on the show, and also in news as well, with the sports team.
And the thing is, I know we didn't know anything about it because he was able to continue to function. And then there was a Saturday morning here, wasn't there, when he was on the air? Mm-hmm. Do you want to call that, or will I? Or
I believe, well, I think it was Sunday, actually.
Was it Sunday, was it?
Yes,
Yeah.
That's the day of the show. And I was normally here. I was normally with him on those Sundays. But that one, I was up in college in Dublin, and I had decided to stay the weekend. And he just felt very ill before he went on air, and Michael Ahern stepped in for him, thankfully. But that was the last day he ever worked, really.
Yeah, because, things that would never be a problem for him to recall started to become a problem, including obviously when he was doing programmes here, some small little things that Tony would never forget in a million years. He started to forget.
Yeah, absolutely. Even things like when we had him at home, to keep him entertained, we had rugby on all the time, golf, all the sports. And, after a year after diagnosis, even maybe a year and a half, that interest was just completely gone. He would stare at that screen. He wouldn't get excited if one of ours scored a try or anything like that.
I don't know what. For Tony, that was just... Yeah, really, really tough. Do you know what? Stay with me. I'll take a short break and we'll come back and talk a little bit more. And obviously about TAD, which is where we're going with this. We're chatting with Rachel McMahon this morning about her Talk About Dementia, or TAD project, and about her dad, our late colleague here, Tony McMahon. So you mentioned about a year afterwards, and how did it progress then, and what lessons did you learn along the road with Tony?
Well, one of them was that he found it difficult to communicate with us. Again, normally that would never have been a problem with him. But he would find him unable to express emotions if he was feeling something or if he wasn't well. But luckily he had this incredible caregiver, that was my mum. And for the 7 years and 8 months after his diagnosis, she gave absolutely everything to him. She dressed him, she fed him, she made sure that he got the best level of care. And when he entered a nursing home, and I have to say the staff were absolutely wonderful, including his nurse Sinead Ryan Cook. My mum was still there nearly every single day with him and just ensuring that he was well and happy and content. By that time, he was no longer able to do very much.
And what about recognition of people?
Well, there's a story actually that came to mind while I was, I guess, thinking back over different incidents throughout the years. We had to take him to hospital once. There was a problem with his swallow, which can happen with some patients. And he was asked many questions by a load of doctors. Things like, what year is it? What day is it? He was asked at the time, who was the Taoiseach? And he said, Cowan. And he was absolutely right. So that surprised us. And we're like, okay. And then the doctor pointed at me and he said, do you know this girl? And he looked straight at me, and I knew in that very instance he didn't know my name, but he answered yes. And that answer made me laugh because he had actually answered the doctor's question. He did know that girl. He just couldn't remember her name, and that's what I held on to. Yes. I took the funny moment out of that.
Yes.
With my mom, I think there was always some sort of recognition. Even in the final days, if I was saying Mum is on her way, you could see his face visibly calm a lot, and I know whenever she was around that he just seemed to be very at peace, because there was a lot of times that he wasn't. It was very uncharacteristic of him to ever yell. There was a period of shouting and terrible swearing as well that he went through that was quite distressing for us to watch. But as his nurse said to me during an interview that I'm doing for a book that I hope to have out sometime in the future, it was just something for him to say. It was just the words that were left in his memory. It wasn't anything to do with how he was feeling or what he wanted to say to you.
They don't call it the long goodbye for nothing, do they?
They do not.
So what is TAD?
TAD is Talk About Dementia. And as I've mentioned earlier today, dementia is an umbrella term for many forms of dementia. You have, it includes early onset Alzheimer's, Lewy body dementia, which I believe Robin Williams was diagnosed with, which also has Parkinson's as well to make it even more difficult. There's vascular dementia as well, which again is very, very big in Limerick right now. So with Dad, it was early onset Alzheimer's, and I really wanted to reach out and to advise people about how to care or how to get through these very, very tough times. And I reached out to Richard Lynch of ilovelimerick.com, and his own father, Eric, had sadly passed away from vascular dementia, and both our families knew each other as well, it felt like fate in a way that we got together. So Richard was really, really helpful, and his team, of course, Michelle, Eddie, Fran, in putting this together and getting it launched and getting it out there and giving me that bit of confidence to talk about this subject matter.
And how can people get involved in TAD?
Well, we're asking people a question. If you can share one experience or one fact about dementia, what would it be? And we're utilising social media for this. We have Facebook accounts, we have Twitter account, Instagram account, where you can share your piece of advice. And in the text box where you normally comment, we're asking you to put in your hashtag, because that automatically becomes a link and actually unites people who are talking about the subject. So if you're sharing yours, perhaps there's something that you can take from other people as well. As I said to you, it's not just going to be, quotes on a scenic picture. It's going to be the facts, really, how to get through it logically. And that it's okay sometimes not to be Florence Nightingale or lose your temper or anything like that. All of these things happen. It's such a difficult journey, and especially with somebody that you love, you can't be perfect all of the time. And I want to let people know that they can fall down, they can get back up again.
Okay. Will you come back and talk to us about the book?
If you'll have me, there's a foreword by Tony Ward, which I've managed to finagle, and I had to laugh. His book is out before mine. Maybe he might let me know about the publisher when he's back in Limerick in a few weeks. But yeah, I'd love to do that. I would. So as I said, we're asking that question across social media. We can be found on facebook.com/Talk About Dementia or twitter.com TA Dementia. So we're open to anyone sharing their piece with us. If you can take a photograph with the piece of paper written down. I've done this several times if people want to know how to actually do it. If they're a little afraid of the camera, perhaps just hold it up and get it snapped, because all advice is welcome and can be just so important to other people. Well
done to you, Rachel. I'm sure Tony is smiling down on you this morning in the studio and chatting to us, and he's thought about in here. And what a broadcaster he was too. He was really, really fantastic. Rachel McMahon, thank you very much for telling us about Talk About Dementia, or the TAD project.